On today's episode of the Finish Line, myself, Richmond Webb, and Mr. BallGame, we are back at it, and we got a lot to talk about as the Miami Dolphins, they cut an offensive lineman to make room for a successful claimed wide receiver. Plus, they had another wide receiver who I was imploring them to add on the cut stream we did yesterday. I wanted D'Wayne Eskridge. Well, the Dolphins, they listened, and they brought him in. Plus, 103 NFL players were asked to give their top 5 most underrated and most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL, and Tua Tagovailoa made both lists. Okay, so we will talk about all that, plus a ton more as we got practice squad information. We're going to go over some things that Grier said today that aren't going to sit well with Dolphin fans. So we got a lot to talk about. Do me the favor, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, let's get into this one.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
All right, huddle up, huddle up. We're gonna crank these engines up on one. All right? Wait, 80. Wait, set. Drivers, start your engines.
This is the Finish Line.
I coached some great offensive linemen in the past. Larry Little, Dwight Stevenson, Jim Langer, all Hall of Famers, and Richmond Webb belongs to that same group.
Here are your hosts, legendary Miami Dolphins left tackle Richmond Webb, Reason, and Mr. BallGame.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one. As it seems, our boy BallGame just got home, so that's what's happening right now. He's just switching over from the car to his little setup, so he'll be with us momentarily. Until then, Richmond, it's me and you, the dynamic duo, bro. How you feeling, bro? It's been a few weeks, right? I went to camp. You had some stuff going on. It's been hectic with trying to get news out first. So I've had to do some solo dolo shows, but we're back at it. And we are only like a week and a half away from game 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Glad to be back. I think that's the thing I'm most excited about is, like you said, we're less than weeks away from the season starting. And I've been moving around a little bit, and but you held it down as usual, as you always do. And our boy, Mr. BallGame, gonna make his grand appearance in just a few minutes. But just glad to be back on here. I was able to see, I think, the first preseason game and missed the last 2, so I was a little disappointed about that. But I got the NFL ticket, so once the regular season games start, that's all alleviated. But just glad that you got through camp. The cuts or the roster has been kind of set, And I'm sure it probably still will be some changes because it's still early on, and everybody will kind of nitpick to what's out there, who let who go, and this and that. And so we can see some more additions, early on this and that, and address some needs or whatever. But just glad to be back on the show. Glad to be back, with you in ball game, and just ready for the season to start. So, hey, the real is now, the 3 little preseason games out the way, and it's time to get going.
You never really had like a time in your career where you had to be nervous around cut down, right?
No.
I guess that's what happens to one of the best ever.
I didn't never take it for granted. I mean, I always worked hard, but I don't think I was ever in that situation. So that was definitely fortunate that, because I think that was the biggest thing that shocked me when I came from college to Miami. We had 95 guys on scholarship. So either you were a walk-on or you were on scholarship. And then when I got to Miami, you meet all these guys, you got 80, 90 guys in camp. And then, next thing you go through a couple of games and then see some empty lockers or guys that they're getting shipped out of there. And most of the time they did it to where they would contact the guys where, maybe it was on lunch or somewhere, it just wasn't like just blatant where you had to walk through everybody and let everybody know you was getting cut. But that's when I realized, man, this is a business and this and that. So it was a rude awakening, but that was something you had to learn fast and not to take it for granted. Yeah, I was fortunate on that part.
Now, one of your we've talked about a lot of stories from your past over the years we've been doing this show, whether backstage or on the show. One of the most fascinating stories that I always think of when training camp comes around, especially with where we're at right now with the running back room, is just, I'll never forget when you were backstage with me in BallGame and you told us how enamored all of you guys were with Cecil Collins when you guys finally thought, oh my God, we're going to get like a game-changing run. I mean, you guys got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to over 1,000 yards, so you deserve a pat on your back to begin with on that. But I'll never forget when you said, we thought we had one with Cecil Collins and then how it worked out. And I bring that up because you talked about, building these relationships with people. And then all of a sudden you go into the room and, they're no longer there and you see the empty stalls and stuff. So I don't know. It's got to be quite the rude awakening, right? But yeah, I just remember you guys really thought you had one with Cecil, eh?
He checked all the boxes. I mean, as far as just a guy that could run in between the tackles outside, and he had some size. He was a thick back, and I remember him at LSU. He had some issues there and had to transfer. But a lot of times you see guys in college, and they're really good running backs, no matter what position it is. They're really good, but sometimes they fit the system, and then you get guys that you just don't know, and they come in there, and it doesn't matter what system you put it in, they're going to produce. They're just that type of guy. And Cecil was that. He showed flashes early on. I was like, man, this dude here is the truth. And he started out good and then kind of had a setback, and that was it. But man, he definitely had the ability to rush for 1,000 yards. I mean, you ask anybody, he was that type of running back. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was Louisiana does it now. I know Joe Burrow won it, Mr. Football. He was the first ever player to be awarded Louisiana's Mr. Football.
Oh, really?
So, I didn't know that. Yeah. So, and that was in his I think his final year of high school. He had 100 touchdowns and 8,000 yards during his time in high school. The guy was just absolutely crazy because even I remember him being on the roster, and I remember even being a little excited about him. BallGame, welcome back, brother. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good, man. Life's been lifing, but take the punches and keep right on rolling, man. It is what it is. What's good with you guys?
Can you believe we're only a week and a half away from meaningful football?
It seems like it's been forever, though, man. That's the crazy part.
We made it. We made it.
Yeah, but we here now. Yeah.
All right. I wanted to ask you, I know, guys, if you didn't know, Doug will be going down to the Raiders game. Jennifer will be going to the Raiders game. Me and BallGame will be going down to the Raiders game. Richmond, which game are you going down to this year, does it look like? Do you know yet?
I will be at, for sure, Jacksonville. I will be for sure at Arizona. And right now,
you got to make the Raiders trip. You got to make the Raiders trip, bro.
I might have to make the Raiders trip, but also I might have something to do for that Monday night game. I think is that the Titans?
Yeah. It is,
but
right?
that ain't confirmed yet. It's like late September or something like that. It's a Monday night game. I forgot who it is, but I know those two for sure. So the Raiders game is in what, November?
November 16th or 17th.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can. You a ball game gonna be down.
A lot of us are coming down. A lot of us are coming down for that, actually, because I know the Arizona one is fan club, right? That's the fan club weekend. The Arizona one. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's pretty sweet, man. So, all right. Well, okay. Let's get into it. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked. The Brian Flores and Tua stuff happened. The preseason happened. The roster cuts happened yesterday. Before we get into all the topics for tonight, is there anything you guys want to say about what's transpired since the last time we came together?
Man, I figured you're gonna bring up some of it anyway, but I saw a lot of people posting, man, and there's all these different mixed feelings about whether or not Tua was soft and whether Flores was right in his approach and all these things. And I just reflect back to being a coach, man, and one of the first things that I took on and understood in that responsibility or in that role was that it's all about player development. And it's all about bridging gaps and figuring out who your players are. Regardless, I mean, I had players that didn't necessarily see eye to eye with me and my philosophies for defense and things of that nature, but that didn't stop me from getting that player to buy into what we were trying to accomplish. I knew that I had to meet that player. Some players I had to go 60%, some I had to go 70% to get them to see that I was committed to growing them as a football player and as a person. And I just think when it looked like over the totality of how this thing shook out between Tua and Flores, man, I think it's unfortunate and it's unfair for people to say, oh, he was soft and this, that, and the third, because the eras change too as players change. And, for someone to be in probably the most pressure-packed position in football and then have to get up and go to work knowing that the person that's you got to go take leadership from doesn't even want you there. That's a cold place to be in, man. I'm in the military where I had a lieutenant that just could not, for the life of me, bridge any gaps and make any relationships with the junior troops or with any other leadership. And it was a horrible working environment for a lot of people. Not so much for me, because I always felt like no matter who he was there, I knew what my job was. And I think that when, you factor in how football has changed and how people have changed, Tua speaking out about his truth, whether people like it or not, you just got to accept it for what it was. The man, that's who he is now. He's over 25 years of age, cognizant in his thought processes and how this process affected him. The man has the right to say how he felt, and that was his experience. And, and you didn't see, I didn't see anything where Brian said he wasn't that, that person. He just said that he's got some things he's got to grow, and some areas he's got to grow as well. That too is a plus for him, and realizing that what he learned with Belichick and how Belichick did things is just not going to translate probably over as well nowadays with the new generation of quarterbacks and players in general, because Tua wasn't the only one that complained about Brian Flores' coaching style.
Yeah.
We lost Minka Fitzpatrick as a result of it. You see what I'm saying? So nobody really killed Minka the same way they killed Tua when, this kid's coming off the most detrimental, I'm sorry to linger, but one of the most crazy injuries ever.
Yeah.
And then
the hip.
To go through the hip, man, and then have to go through knowing that you got somebody. Oh yeah, the other guy.
Well, BallGame. Did you see Tua kind of theorize about? Did you see him when he was asked about why he started against the Rams? And he said, I have my theories about it. I don't want to get into it. And basically, you can read between the lines. Well, yeah, that or he wanted to put him in a position to fail or
early.
he wanted, and he wanted to put him in a position where he didn't look good. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was loved by the room where Tua could lose the room right out the gate.
Right. Yeah, it was a whole sabotage act, bro. And I've never seen it so blatant. But you know what I'm saying, for someone to stand there and then try to justify why someone would do that to a player.
Oh, because you didn't want him, ball game. What kind of pouting bullshit is this as a coach?
But that's crazy though, because if he hadn't ever gotten hurt, he would have been the #1 pick off the board. And who in their right mind wouldn't want a guy that has the ability to have even been that person? We know who he was. He just had to. Okay, so it took him a couple years to get past the injury, but look who he's developed into now. And so that's just my thing, man. That's probably the most disheartening thing that I witnessed. Him having to relive and go through that, and then see people calling him soft and saying all this stuff about him. When I'm thinking, you can't really call somebody soft if you've never experienced what that man experienced and went through, first off. And secondly, your opinion is your opinion, but make sure your opinion is wrapped around something that you can tangibly say was a learning process or something that you took away from it that you wouldn't do to someone else, because there was a lot to take away from that people can grow from and implement into their, even just their own relationships, that will probably make your relationship better. And you can look at a lot of things and say, yeah, that's definitely not how you're going to build relationships. You know what I mean? Because that was a lot, man. That's crazy.
Anything you want to add, Richmond, before we get into everything?
Did he freeze?
I think Richmond froze up.
Oh man.
Or either that or he's really sad right now. And he's just
I think he froze, man.
He's looking to see, he froze and he dipped. So I listen, I've already said everything I have to say to it, but all I know is this, if you're gonna treat, this is what kind of pissed me off, because you had other people out here on X, on YouTube, kind of justifying how Tua was being treated and other players were being treated by Flores. Because I always brought up, hey, don't forget Jalen Phillips had to go see a sports therapist, right? Like, don't forget what happened to that kid too, right? And it's like, man, a lot of you are fathers or mothers. You wouldn't want your kid treated like that. So, but why? Because it's a football player and they're subhuman. That's okay to treat them like that. That's what's wild to me, bro. Like, if anyone talked to my daughters like that, like, because BallGame, we went and found out that it wasn't like it was just happening at camp. He was texting these things to Tua as well. Like, bro, if you are texting my kids that kind of stuff, brother, I mean, there is going to be an issue, sir.
Yeah, that's mental sabotage, man.
Yeah,
like on the highest level.
Because you're now bringing it off the field, right? Like,
so he cyberbullied him. That's crazy.
Okay, before we wait for Richmond to get back here and we get into everything, your thoughts on what you've seen from the defense in the preseason so far?
To be honest with you, I like the fact that Weaver was aggressive, right? I like the fact that he actually showed some fronts and showed some versatility. He moved the guys around, a lot of different packages, a lot of different, a lot of different groupings of guys and things of that nature. And he's going to, that in itself provides an offensive coordinator with a lot of stuff that they got to work through, because you never know which group and which look they're going to give you. And with all that versatility, I think it was good that he went ahead and established that early, that you won't see the same thing over and over again. And he gave some young guys a lot of opportunities to play roles that they probably hadn't previously played anywhere else or hadn't thought about playing. And he showcased a lot of athleticism and, and just flexibility in the defense. That in itself, like I said, what he did is the groundwork for a lot of more positive outcomes down the stretch. And they weren't at any point shy about making sure you understood that the run game was definitely going to be something. Your run game against us was going to be hard. We're going to be right there to smack you in the face. I was glad to see that the linebackers wasn't sitting at 7 and 8. They was more like 5 or 6. And they was coming downhill ready to engage. Brooks looked good. Anthony Walker looked good in times. Channing Tindall with that second group. show some flashes. You know what I mean? They gave him an opportunity to show off his athleticism and his ability.
I think you mean Curtis Bolton because Walker didn't play.
Oh yeah. Bolton. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah. What do you think of the secondary? Like Maitrey, Isaiah Johnson, Storm Duck, the young kids, Patrick McMorris, that first game with all those tackles.
To me, those guys will provide quality depth, right? And I think that when you have guys and you give them as many reps as he gave them, you're less likely not to put them in situations than you would be if you hadn't gotten those reps. I think what it comes down to is that he was looking to establish a level of trust, right? If I can put you out there and I can give you all of these reps, you're not gonna fold on me. You're gonna still be ready. I'm still gonna be able to depend. What happened? Oh, Richmond, huh?
Yeah.
Still able to depend on you and things of that nature. And that's kind of how, as a new coordinator, you have to go through the process of building this rapport with your new guys, with your young guys. Anyway, your vets are your vets, right? So you go in and you talk. He probably already had the veteran talk, saying a conversation with them in regards to what his expectations was. But it's the young guys that are the wild cards, and those are the guys that are actually going to be in there filling in the gaps and making sure that everything makes sense in the big and larger scheme of things. So I'm glad he gave him a lot of reps, man, because those are quality reps that you get a lot of quality film to go back and look through the week and see if a guy really can make it or if a guy can really help you, you know what I mean? And you didn't burn out the legs of your veterans either, right? With reps that really doesn't matter. You gave it to the guys that are actually vying for a job. So I love this approach. So
Yeah. And it's also good to see growth from players like what we saw from Brandon Peely, Tua praising Chop Robinson, the growth you saw from day one at OTAs to by the end there, even though right now he kind of looks like more of a pass rush specialist than a 3 down. Because did you notice they were running right at Chop when he was out of the and he was having problems with contain, right?
Right.
So
but that's a learn at this level though. For the NFL, at least in the NFL, that's a learn. He needs reps.
Yeah. You good, Richmond?
Man, we got 2 internets. I switched to the other deal. I don't know what the deal keep cutting out on me, so I apologize about that. But I'll be listening to y'all talking. Next thing you know, the screen goes blank, and I'm like, oh no, who again? No, I'm good. Hopefully this does it. So hopefully no more interruptions. I apologize about that.
Oh, you got 2 internets, huh? You remember Menace Society? Oh, you a baller, huh? You a baller, huh? Give me your pager. You remember that? Oh, you a baller, huh? You a baller? Give me your pager. Oh my God, man! I wish I could live the life where I got two internets, bro. What's this guy over here? Shea Webb over here. Okay, so Richmond, you got anything you want to add before we get into everything?
I was just listening to BallGame talking about the Flores Tua situation, and I guess the only thing I'll add to that is, what I like about it is, even though Tua mentioned it, I don't think he was trying to put Brian Flores in a bad light. I think he was just talking about his experience as a player versus what it was like up under Coach Flores versus Mike McDaniel. And I thought he handled it with straight classes and that. So I don't think he was trying to throw it up under the rug. And then what other thing you got to realize is he's held on for a couple of years, even before even mentioning it. I mean, he could have came out and said anything, but he didn't choose to do that. And I think he's just basically describing his experience. And it kind of reminded me of like some old school coaches. A lot of times they would be real hard negative on their players and stuff like that. But it's a balance with anything, no matter what type of coach you are. And I think in Coach Flores, he's just learning. And I saw some clips where he kind of addressed it, and I think he knew he possibly made some mistakes. And you said in BallGame, said you can't what worked for Coach Belichick might not work for you. You got to figure out what works for you, and how to relate to the players. Because one thing I always say is, if a player feels he can trust you, he'll put it on the line for you. But if he feels you don't really care about him or whatever, that's the easiest way to lose the locker room. And like was said earlier, it wasn't just Tua. If it was just Tua, you might question that, but it was other guys that kind of felt the same way, this and that. So the only way you get better is listen to criticism, and then you work on that. And so hopefully he gets better. I think Tua's focused on him becoming a better player, this and that. So that's the way I looked at it. But, that was my take on that. But glad to see he's moved on and he's focused, and his mind and mental is in a whole much better state. And sometimes I'll put people in your place to take you where you want to go, but to go from that to, Mike McDaniel thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, how he envisioned him in this offense and what he could do. It's almost like it'll shake you up and be like, damn, is he really talking about me? Me, because this other guy was just saying it. It's a good thing, and it worked out. So I wish him the best, and that's it. So that's all I got.
Gordon says, and this is a good point, I never even thought about this. The same thing happened with Frank Tarkenton and Norm Van Brocklin back in the 60s. Norm treated Frank like absolute SHIT and eventually traded him to the Giants. Frank was traded back after Norm was gone, and he ended up having a Hall of Fame career.
I did not know that. Wow.
I did not know that. Did you know that? I did not know that. That's my Johnny Carson. Yeah, that's a very interesting look at it. Gotta like when the OGs come through and drop the knowledge. That's a good one. Over 475 in the room on YouTube right now. We are live exclusively on YouTube. Smash that like button, subscribe for new. Let's get into it. So let's start off speaking of Tua. So ESPN asked over 100 players to rank quarterbacks according to a variety of criteria. So they asked the top 3 quarterbacks, the rookie quarterback who will have the most successful career, most overrated quarterback, and most underrated quarterback. All right. So check this one out. Most overrated quarterback. All right.
Josh Allen.
Tua Tagovailoa, Josh Allen was number 1. And then Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa were tied at number 2. They each received 10 votes.
Haters.
Justin Herbert was number 3. He received 9. Trevor Lawrence was number 4. He received 8. Deshaun Watson was number 5. He received 7. Kyler was number 6. He received 6. And then Brock Purdy was on this list too. All right. So there's your. Now check this out though. They were asked to vote the most underrated quarterback. I'll be damned. Purdy was number 1, tied with Stafford. Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff were tied after that at number 2, but you got it at 3 or whatever, with Jordan Love and Bryce Young. Tua Tagovailoa made the underrated list.
How can you be both?
That and Hurts did too.
How can you be both?
Can someone? That's what I'm saying. Can someone make sense of this to me right now?
Make that make sense. How the hell can you be both,
brother? Did they ask all? Did they only pull players with CTE? Is that what's happening right now?
Wow.
Well, how are you the number 2 most overrated quarterback voted on by over 100 NFL players, but then you make the top 10 most underrated quarterbacks?
That's crazy. The hate is real for this kid, man. I don't understand it.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think the overrated is there because of how much? Do you think they were voting him overrated because of how much he's talked about in the media?
There could be some hate. It could be something in that. Another thing you got to consider, too, was this starters? Was this backups? You know what I'm saying? Who is 100 players? I mean, I know they can't identify them, but I think most guys that starters or whatever, a few of them will because they like attention, but most of them I think was like, nah, man, that ain't nothing. I'm trying to, because it's not really putting nobody in a positive light or whatever. And I'm like, really, all you doing is giving people locker room material to just hype them up to say, okay, y'all don't think I'm this or y'all don't think I'm that. Now,
there you go. He cut out. Ball game. I think he froze again. Oh, he's good. He's good. He's gone. There he is.
Yeah,
there he is.
I wouldn't pay much attention to it. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to use this to show, since y'all think this is what I am or whatever, I can show you better than I can tell you. And Tua's not a big trash talker, and that. he just goes out and executes. So all y'all doing is just waking up. Don't poke the bear. That's sometimes I always tell people, when the bear leaves sleep, don't wake him up. So y'all keep putting stuff like that out. It's just giving these guys motivation. And some of those are, a lot of people play quarterbacks or, guys that have went there. So I was like, wow, y'all either need to stop listening to these analysts on TV or something. But that was pretty amazing.
Well, Tony makes a good point. How could he possibly be number 2 overrated when it was the players that rated him highly on that top 100 list? Remember, he made it in the 30s. He was higher than Herbert and everything.
That's what I'm saying. Make it make sense.
So Richmond's right. Like, who are you asking, right? Like, did you pull Mike White 100 times? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And just making number 2 on the overrated and the top 10 on the underrated is literally the definition of from Dark Knight. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus Lord. What do you think about this ball game?
I think it's complete horseshit, to be honest with you. I'd like to see the list of the 100 and some odd people that they polled, because, obviously we know that top 100 list came out, prior to what happened in the playoffs and whatnot and things of that nature. But for him to have been regarded as one of the top 100 players during that time frame, that was a lot of football that had already been played. So now you're going to turn around and go back and say that he's on both lists, underrated and overrated. I just don't understand how you can be both at the same time, because in theory, quarterbacks are based on the statistics. Most of what quarterbacks do, that's what people say, well, he don't have the stats, but okay, how's he overrated? He had almost 4,000 some odd yards last year. Yeah, so what you want to say that's only because Tyreek was there? Some people argue that, but in the same sense, somebody still got to get Tyreek the ball.
Why'd Mahomes never lead the league in passing with Tyreek?
That part. And now Tyreek's done the same thing damn near 2 years in a row with Tua at the helm, right? Over 1,700 yards, both seasons. Both statistically his best seasons ever as a receiver. And then you turn around, and that might be some of it too, because people that's definitely it too. They're coming off of that left hand as opposed to coming off the right hand, where everything else looks the same, but he looks different, so they don't know how to appreciate it. That, to me, that's all aligned with personal preference and some level of hate that's in there, because I don't want to have to look at it coming out the other way, because I don't understand if it's effective. It's as effective as the other guys. He's not like the other guys. That's the whole point of why his dad made him switch to being a lefty, so that he could be unique and be different. Yeah. Overrated and underrated at the same time. That's like that's like being rich and poor at the same time.
No, y'all remember Chappelle's show, The Player Haters Ball?
That part.
That's exactly what this feels like, eh?
Yeah.
Hey. Like, you know what I mean? Oh my God, that's what this feels like. Silky Johnson's out here, Silky. Oh my God. You remember Silky? Oh, that was classic. Oh man. So yeah, make that one make sense for us. Someone in the chat, please. We beg of you. Moving on though. The Dolphins today, they were awarded Grant DuBose, receiver from Green Bay, off of waivers. And guess what they did to make space for Grant DuBose? They released an offensive lineman in Jack Driscoll, who they've been cross-training at center and was in the backup right guard battle with Lester Cotton to back up Liam Eichenberg. They said, man, peace, brother. We're good. Listen, I say all that to then play this clip for you guys. It's crazy. It's kind of crazy. Listen, just quickly on Grant DuBose, I'll give people a rundown on him. He's actually had a really good preseason for Green Bay. I know a lot of Green Bay fans wanted them to be able to stash him on the practice squad. He's had a pretty good preseason. He's a very good blocker. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you got to love Mike McDaniel getting rid of a offensive lineman for a blocking wide receiver. But that makes sense because of what they would ask River Craycraft to do, right? So kind of makes sense with the switch over there. So and that wasn't, we'll get into the more people they added here, but I want to play this clip for you guys because Chris Grier was asked about the offensive line today. And this is what he said regarding the offensive line. So let me play this clip. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear this.
It's always interesting because Mike and I were talking about this the other day that with the offensive line, how every year that's you guys are like, oh, not good enough, not good enough. Then offensively, we're pretty good offense the last 2 years, and a number of you guys have talked about how the guys have improved. Those guys on the offensive line have worked their tails off. We feel confident in them. The coaching staff believes in them, and Butch and Mike and Frank have done a great job, and Lem in helping those guys develop and work. And so, I think the important thing is they all work together. It's a really cohesive unit, and just watching them work together is great every day. They hang out together, so it's a very close knit unit. That said, yeah, we'll add someone to the practice squad like we always do. And just for your information, we released Jack Driscoll recently because he claimed Grant DuBose wide receiver, and so that was the roster move for him. Jack's a good kid, worked his tail off. It's just unfortunately a numbers crunch for us. But we're confident in the offensive line. So again, it's just one of those. It's Mike and I we always kind of chuckle. I know you guys have made a joke about me saying that you guys are more worried about it than we are. But internally, that's how we feel about our group here as a team.
Now, again, he kind of doubled down on the whole, we're comfortable, we're confident, and we know we've kind of gained what the theory is. Centers and tackles matter to this staff. Guards, they basically feel that's where we can make do. That's where we don't need to spend money. We can rely on good coaching, and we can rely on the scheme as long as these players are athletic enough, as long as they take in what's understood and what's expected of them. All they need is the athleticism. All they need is the understanding, and all they need is the coaching, and we can get by with the guards. Where I could sit here and probably make an argument to you that the loss of Robert Hunt has had a bigger ripple effect on this team than Christian Wilkins. I can sit here and I can make that argument to you right now because we also don't know what Austin Jackson's going to look like with either Lester Cotton to his left at right guard or Liam Eichenberg to his left at right guard this year. Listen, I listened to that, and I got to ask you guys, is this arrogance or ignorance with the offensive line? Like, is this arrogance in terms of overconfident that you can basically make chicken salad out of chicken shit? Or is this ignorance where we all realize what's going on and what's needed and what needs to be upgraded and where the help needs to come from, but they're just being ignorant to that fact, sticking to their guns, and that could end up being something that costs someone a job down the line? What's your take on this overconfidence you are seeing in this offensive line, especially where the interior sits right now? Because, gentlemen, he was also asked about Isaiah Wynn. Now, I had an update on Patreon and for channel members only where I'm hearing word that Isaiah Wynn might not even come back this year. He had a setback in rehab. I told everyone he was at least going to go on the pup for the first 4 weeks, but there is internally a worry that Isaiah Wynn might not even be back this year because of his setback. Okay, that means Robert Jones is your starting left guard this year, and we saw Robert Jones was struggling at times in Game 2 and Game 3 of the preseason right there. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Because, guys, they didn't even put it. There was one offensive lineman claimed. It was Royce Newman who went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were lower on the claim wire than we were. We didn't even put in a claim for an offensive lineman. What are your guys' thoughts on this confidence that Grier continues to show in this offensive line when we can clearly see the glaring holes? I'll start with you, Richmond, because, hey, who better to ask about it than you?
Well, I'm gonna say this, and Chris Grier takes the blunt or the shoulder responsibility bit. To me, I think it's got to be a conversation where Mike McDaniel is involved in some of these decision-making processes. I believe that it's more of a value put on the skill positions and what they can do with the receiver, the way they get the ball out, the speed, the way this offense is designed to where they say, well, we can kind of get by with just, some okay guys in the offensive line. And like you said, you made a good point. They don't value the guards. but as long as they got two good tackles in the center, they can work. Which is, I was sitting here thinking about it when I was listening to the clip, and I remember Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator in the 49ers, and it's almost a total opposite. It seemed like the 49ers want to have the run game and then let the passing game feed off. So it's a total flip-flop. But I do believe Coach McDaniel has some say-so in it, and I just believe that, like you said, the guy we got from Green Bay, I think he's good, and I think, they say, hey, well, we got Butch Barry. He was able to make it work. He put it together. We had all those guys. We got guys good enough to get it done. The thing that I'm concerned about is, in the regular season, but as you get closer to December in the playoffs, I think that's when that is magnified a magnitude. You only covered up for so long because now it's only like 6-7 teams, but you're getting the 7 best teams out of the AFC, 7 out of the NFC. So some of those teams you beat early in the season that wasn't that good. Now you're playing with teams like, what I did against them is not going to work against us. You got to really come with your A game, and I think that's where my concern is that that's when it'll be where everybody can see it and be like, what's wrong with the offensive line and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It can come back at you later. That's my take.
Especially when you play the Chiefs, who got guys like Chris Jones on the interior, when you got Justin Matabuki and stuff in Baltimore on the interior, when you start dealing with those strong interior teams, and we know in the playoffs, you can't just sit back in the pocket and throw 50 times and expect to win. You got to win trench battles because you got to be able to run the football in the playoffs to really start to make an impact, right? BallGame, what are your thoughts on this whole situation right here?
To be honest with you, I don't question much about what they do regarding that O-line because I think they see the benefit of letting guys mature and letting guys grow. I think they've been more than overwhelmed and happy about, even though it was a slow road to get there, the success of Austin Jackson, the way he's developed to at this point, and I believe that they're banking on Liam probably making himself around the same corner at some point this year. So I do believe that if things start to get out of hand, though, that he may very well use some assets to trade with someone who's not having a successful season before the trade deadline happens and bring somebody in. But I think they just want, if they're going to do it, I think they're going to do it for someone that they know without a shadow of a doubt is a clear upgrade over anybody that they're depending on. And the tackles, like you said, the center and the tackle positions are the premier spots that they're concerning most with, and the guard positions are not. So they're willing to wait a little bit longer to allow Liam and whoever else is going to man that left guard spot to grow. And I can't really argue that because I've seen that firsthand too as a coach, where we was on the defense side of the ball saying, "Man, you gonna play this freshman? You know what I'm saying? Over the junior?" He was like, the freshman got intangibles, man. The kid doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's not as strong, but he's technically sound over the guy who had the experience. So, and they believe in Butch. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the more important parts about that goes without stated is that they assembled this coaching staff fully giving these guys autonomy and allowing them to be the most authentic versions of themselves to get these players to the next plateau. And that's just a part of buying in the process, I guess. You know, some of it don't look too nice because when you look at the line, you're like,
But okay, hold on a sec. First of all, over 540 of you in the room on YouTube. Smash that like button, subscribe for new. Okay, hold on a sec. Okay, because you bring up Butch Barry, and this was what I was going to ask you to. I want your thoughts on this. Okay, we've had this conversation on air. We've had this conversation privately, me and you, with Richmond. Richmond's been on record as saying, okay, one leak on the offensive line, you can make that work. Right. It's when you start getting into 2 or 3 leaks that you're asking for real issues, and we've seen that over the last couple of years with injury. Right. So is it, we keep asking Butch Barry to perform miracles. We're not asking him, okay, you just got to deal with Eichenberg this year. We're asking him, okay, you got to deal with Eichenberg out of position at center. You got to make Lester Cotton work at guard. You got to make, Robert Jones work at guard if that's the situation. You know, the stuff we were asking him to work miracles with multiple interior offensive linemen last year, plus Kendall Lamb at tackle with Armstead out. Is it, like, it gets to a certain point where I understand they're brought here to coach, but is this fair to start asking, hey, we need, it's like to Richmond's point, you're asking for one miracle when you're asking, okay, Eichenberg's at the right guard because we got right tackle, center, left guard, and left tackle seamed up. We're okay. So work a miracle with this guy at right guard. Go ahead. But we're constantly asking him, okay, work a miracle with this guy at right guard. Work a miracle with this guy at center. Work a miracle with this guy at left guard. It gets to a certain extent where I get it. You're brought in here to coach. But are we even being fair to a coach in that situation where we're asking him to perform more miracles than Jesus on a Sunday?
To be honest with you, I think that would be a situation that I would relish. I mean, I think any coach that's worth the shit wants the most difficult of challenges, just so you can prove everyone that didn't believe and that say it can't be done wrong about the process that you put these kids through and these guys through to get them to the next level. I think when you factor in how we structured our offensive line coaches, though, man, like every individual position has a guy for that position that Butch feeds into and also provides insight and in-depth knowledge to, and then that guy's job is to go and give that directly input that to that position, that specific position. That's a different strategy than a lot of other coaches, a lot of other places have in place, because some places only have maybe two line coaches and they handle the whole line. We have a guy for every spot along the line. You see what I'm saying? So they're getting, Liam's getting way more than he probably would want in one-on-one confirmation and interaction with his direct right guard. You know what I mean? Coach. You see what I'm saying? So I have no doubts that they're looking back at the bigger picture, saying if he fails, it won't be because of us, because we're willing to accept this responsibility. And like I'm saying, most coaches are not going to shy away from, you know what I'm saying, tough situations. Now, if it was all five of them,
yeah,
straight shit, two out of five, that's light, bro. I think in terms of coaching, because ain't nobody ever, you know what I mean, no coach ever is going to walk into a situation where everything is good.
The problem is, if Aaron Brewer's out, we're asking for 3 out of 5.
Then that's different. Now you're dealing with a different monster. And I understand it then, but, you know, like I said, Liam's not the best, but he's definitely not the worst it could be. So that's workable, right? I mean, it's opinionated too to some degree, but I've seen worse players than Liam Eichenberg. I just don't necessarily think that he's the best of the guys that we're going to feature on of the group, but he's still growing too. So, and they believe in him. For some reason, they believe in him. So I don't really have no.
What do you think, Richmond? What are your takes on that? Because you've been around a lot of offensive line coaches.
Yeah, I don't think you shy away from it. I was reading the comments. Somebody looked like I was bored. I was kind of reading the comments while BallGame was talking to. As a coach, I don't think you ever shy away from it. But I think as a coach, you can evaluate your players, and you almost know that each player has at the different positions, right? Yeah. So some of these guys, they might get the job done, but they're not there. The question comes in is, like you said, 1 or 2 of these guys go down in the center. The guys that's backing those guys up, you can only work so much magic with it. And I look at, even Detroit last year, when they went to the playoffs last year and they played the 49ers, the way the offensive line was built, they was able to hit them in the mouth, and they really had a chance to win that football game. And I'm not saying we got to have the Lions offensive line, that I just know when playoff comes around, I'm not so much worried during the regular season, but when it gets late in the season and the playoff, that's when you got to raise your level of play a little bit. And if we're getting all we get now, and we can't match, like you said, Chris Jones, or when you got a monster in the middle or whatever, and that guy can slide over different positions, you're going to have to slide to him to try to cover it up. But then now you put somebody else in a single position. it could be a problem. But I don't think Coach Barry is shying away from it. I think he's going to do whatever he can, the best he can. But I think you do got to bring in quality guys. And like you said, his win is hurt, and it's really a possibility he's not going to be back for the season. You got to look at it and say, well, this guy's not going to be here. So we need to bring somebody in that if he was going to be the starter, we need to bring in a starter caliber type of guy. Some of those guys you can develop. Some of them, they just got a certain plateau, and I'm not talking about them, but it's just you're going to only get so much out of them. So that's the thing that kind of concerns me right there is not so much early in the season, this and that, is when we get in the second half of the season and the playoffs, because I think that's everybody's expectation. The way this team is built, if you go to the playoffs, and I know people not going to want to hear, well, we had, injuries in the offensive line. Nobody wants to be the weak link on the team. I just know that. So that's why I'm kind of looking at it the way I'm looking at it. It's like you got an opportunity to kind of fix some of this. And I'm not saying you got to have Pro Bowlers from left tackle to right tackle, but if you got deficiencies and you're really not sure about a guy, even though you're bringing him along and he's progressing, how fast is he progressing? If he's not there, sometimes you got to go get a guy to kind of to take the pressure off a bit to achieve what you're trying to achieve. That's what I'm saying.
And his exact quote with Isaiah Wynn was when he was asked if he'll play this season. He said, "That's the plan, but we'll see." Not exactly a ringing endorsement. So, anyways, continuing on here, someone yesterday when I was doing the live stream for Cut Down Day, a player that I was basically stressing the Miami Dolphins needed to go get because he got cut was D'Wayne Eskridge, the former Western Michigan receiver who was released by the Seattle Seahawks. Now, he is signing with the Dolphins practice squad. Remember, DuBose was a claim. I think Eskridge is going to be a guy that's elevated right away in the first couple weeks. He had a big return this preseason too, a return touchdown. He offers you receiver return ability. He's just under 5'9". He runs a 4.39, does this kid, all right? He was drafted in the second round, 56th overall in 2021. He was a big-time riser because of the Senior Bowl and such that year. I loved him coming out. I was quite high on him. He, I think this is a move where you talk about McDaniel and having faith that McDaniel will unlock the potential of certain players. To me, D'Wayne Eskridge is the epitome of that, of a player Mike McDaniel can unlock the full potential of in this offense. And now D'Wayne Eskridge, it didn't quite work out. Right? New regime came in. He wasn't part of this new regime. He had kind of underwhelmed with the previous regime. He only had one receiving touchdown. He only had I think he had under 20 catches in 2 years or whatever too. I think he offers you a lot in terms of untapped potential for this coaching staff. I think I've been on record, I'll say it again. I think Wes Welker is one of the best wide receiver coaches in the NFL. So D'Wayne Eskridge, he is added on top of that to the practice squad. Jordan Colbert was shifted back to the practice squad. Eric Uzakama, Jonathan Harris, Chasen Hines, Daquan Jackson, Isaiah Johnson, the UDFA from Syracuse. Now, Jason Maitre, who I was pretty high on, he's actually trying out for the Giants. Tackle Baron Matos, he slid on, but he doesn't count because he's an international exemption. Anthony McFarland, Nick Needham has made it to the practice squad. And also has Hayden Rucci. I'm hoping Chris Brooks gets added to that fray too. I'm shocked Chris Brooks has not been picked up by anyone yet. So, BallGame, your thoughts on Nick Needham? I mean, he's been around. He's a long tenured Dolphin, one of the longest tenured Dolphins on that defense, and he's sliding to the practice squad.
Yeah, sometimes, man, these young guys come in, man, with a lot more fire and a lot more athleticism. He got hurt. As he got hurt, he lost a little something.
Yeah.
And I credit him. I give him all the props for working his way back, man, and even being able to get back out there and play. But there's a lot of youth on this team, and especially in the secondary. And these guys seem able to pick up the scheme and execute, you know what I'm saying, without any hiccups. And if you can have supreme speed, agility, and, you know, smartness out there at the same time, that kind of X's out, you know, Needham in one or two areas because he's not the fastest guy. You know what I'm saying? He's not a quick guy. He's he's fundamentally sound, which is what you want your players to be. But a lot of times, especially in the role he was gonna be playing, you need guys that are, you know, got all sorts of ability to get in and out of small spaces and, you know, run with guys stride for stride and stay in phase with them. And like I said, that injury took something from him, so he never was the same after that. So
I think that this might be as healthy as a year. You know, I think his body's probably in the best shape since that injury. Godchild says, even though Reason is always grinding, pause. Glad to see y'all back at it again. If you're not excited for football being back, check your MFN pulse. Shout out to Godchild. Appreciate you. Now, Richmond, I'm going to throw it to you on this because you had something to say about this in our group chat or whatever. So here's a few things the Miami Dolphins. Let's get into a few things the Miami Dolphins did here, okay? So we'll go to move to the quarterback position. All right. Now, the Miami Dolphins, they've had trade discussions, as have the Vikings, the Bears, the Saints, and the Cardinals, with the Browns for Tyler Huntley. This is another player I said, if he gets cut or you got a chance to add, I would add him. He's still only 26 or 27. We saw remember he made the Pro Bowl with Baltimore that year. Lamar went down. We've seen Huntley win some games at the NFL level. He gives you that off-script option with his legs and stuff. But this is where they're at right now, Richmond. It ended up being this is where they went. The Miami Dolphins ended up saying, because Chris Grier said they're signing Tim Boyle to their practice squad. He will be quarterback through. McDaniel likes him per Grier. Now, Tim Boyle is the guy who threw the Hail Mary interception that was returned for 6 points by Javon Holland last year. All right. Tim Boyle's 0-5 as an NFL starter. Tim Boyle has a touchdown to interception ratio of 4 touchdowns to 12 interceptions in his career in the NFL. Somehow they managed to downgrade. You got to give them props. Somehow you managed to downgrade from Mike White. And it's not even like you brought a developmental kid. You know, Sam Hartman slid to the Commanders, practice squad. It's not even like, Bailey Zappi went to the Chiefs after getting cut by the Patriots. So it's not even like you brought in a young developmental kid. You brought in Tim Boyle, who's going to give absolute zero competition for Skyler. You said in our group chat, Richmond, that, man, they're going in on that quarterback position. What are your thoughts on them talking about a trade with the Browns about a kid with a lot of upside as a backup of Tyler Huntley, but then settling with someone with basically no upside and was worse than the option you just released to Mike White, who, speak on this too, Richmond, Mike White signed with the Buffalo Bills yesterday. And a lot, I'm sitting up here theorizing, I don't know if you guys heard, but Raheem Mostert, after they played the Bucs, Levante David came up to Raheem Mostert and was talking about all the new motions and saying it was confusing the hell out of them. So Mike White probably go over there giving secrets to the Bills, and you downgrade from someone even worse than Mike White. Your thought on their handling of the backup quarterback position, Richmond?
Yeah, I think if it's a choice between Boyle and Huntley, it's hands down for me. I mean, that guy's won football games, made plays, this and that. What they see, I don't know. That I'm not a quarterback coach or whatever, and I don't know if bid too high for Huntley because it was several teams that were interested in him. So maybe that was a factor. I know they was interested, but maybe what Browns wanted was more than what the Dolphins wanted to give up or whatever. So that if you just comparing apples to apples, for me, Huntley would be that pick, and it wouldn't be much thought to it. I would bring him in. But Tim Boyle, like I said, I remember exactly. It was right before halftime. I think Javon Holland took it back 100 plus yards, and that was like a game changer. It was like a backbreaker right before half. We playing the Jets, and when you read those stats off, it's hard to you're trying to find something that, you know, like you say, you threw 4 touchdowns, but then when you look at the interceptions compared to that, it's just not good. And it could be factors like maybe the offensive line. It could be other factors. But for me, when you're seeing a guy that's kind of already proven, and you're talking about your backup quarterback, and you definitely want to strengthen that, because if he goes down, we've been in situations where Tua has went down and it's a huge drop off. And I'm not saying Huntley's Tua, but at least you have a little confidence in that's okay. If it's a game or two, maybe he can get us through these games and win these until he gets back. You know what I'm saying? It's not always about replacing the quarterback. It's just buying enough time to where, you know, you can still be competitive, win some. You have to change your game plan a little bit because he's got different strengths than Tua. But you're like, no, this guy's won some football games. So but it just I can't wrap my head around that one. There is just Tim Boyle. I haven't seen anything, but like I said, I haven't watched a lot of film on Tim Boyle, and maybe Coach McDaniel sees something that he can fix to bring him in. But I definitely think for sure you need a good, solid number 2 quarterback in the event that something happens to your starter. I agree with you on that.
And finally, here I want to get your guys' thoughts on it because OBJ's been moved to the PUP. Now, Grier addressed OBJ today, and he said something very interesting. So let me play this clip, and then I want to get your thoughts on the OBJ situation.
We were very hopeful that it would be around week 1 here. And
returning.
to be honest with you guys, we put him down. He did not want to go down. He feels, and he is very close. You guys have seen him glimpses of him running around outside doing stuff. He's very close, but for us, it was the long play. We didn't want him to rush back, feeling that he had to rush back, and then something happened and it sets us back. So this was more Mike and I sitting down, talking with Kyle, the trainers, and we just felt what's best for him long haul to help us here win games is to put him down for a little bit right now.
So he's basically admitting to us that OBJ didn't want to go on the PUP list on the IR. He didn't want to get shut down for the first 4 games. That, you know, he could probably play in some of those first 4 games, whether it be week 2, week 3, whatever the case may be. You know, we'll start with you, BallGame. Where are you? Are you okay with their safe approach and the long-term outlook? You know, they're more worried about OBJ being able to play the final 4 games of the season than the first 4 games of the season. They only brought on 4 receivers on the 53, Braxton, Jalen, OBJ, as well as, you know, Tyreek, right? Now they've brought in, you know, D'Wayne Eskridge to the practice squad, who probably get elevated, as well as Grant DuBose. Eric Izakama has been brought back to the practice squad, so there'll be candidates for them to elevate. What's your take on this whole thing? Because, you know, they talked about BallGame how they admitted that he had a procedure, and they knew that this was a possibility because he had a procedure in the offseason. What are your thoughts on them stressing we need a number 3 guy, and they sign a number 3 guy who's not ready to go for the beginning of the season, and Malik Washington is the other receiver they capped? So.
Well, to be honest with you, I think when they had a conversation with him, they kind of knew that he needed some things to be cleaned up medically. But he offers you more upside long term down the stretch in terms of experience. And veteran presence for the games that are going to matter the most, especially those ones that last 6 down the stretch. For me, I'm okay with him not being available early if I can have him late, because I think we have enough in the room with the addition of Jonnu Smith alone is going to be enough to sustain them for the first couple of weeks. I think Smith is an amazing talent, and I think what he's going to be able to bring in terms of that intermediate area of the field, the seam routes, and all the other wicked and crazy stuff that Mike can do with him from the tight end position. That's going to be able to not have them worry so much about OBJ right out the bat. And that gives some of the other guys, too, an opportunity to get healthy, like Craycraft and whatnot. And, the other guys, they can fill in. But I think we have enough.
Malik looks like a game changer, bro.
Yeah. I think we have enough. And I think that's what that thought process is, that we have enough weapons to be able to go out and win games and allow this guy an opportunity to get healthy when he can help us down the stretch later.
Yeah.
You know, he's that type of talent. So
BallGame, that's why I think they kept Tanner Connor, because they can line him up as a big slot. They can line him up on the boundary. He gives you another receiving threat just from a different spot. So I think we're going to see a little bit more 12 personnel than we have in the last couple of years. Maybe even some 22 as well.
Tanner Connor a little different too, though, because it's rare you see guys that big with that type of speed. You feel me? Playing at that position. So yeah, he's definitely a guy that you can put out in certain packages and stress the hell out of a defense with, because he's too big for a corner, but he's too fast for a linebacker type of situation. You know what I'm saying? So Mike, and I believe Mike this year in his third year is going to be all about exploiting matchups. So
and Achane's probably going to get a lot of targets too, right?
He's definitely going to be lined up out in the slot. A lot of balls thrown to him, probably a lot of tunnel screens. You know what I'm saying? A lot of weird and crazy stuff that you've never seen before and thought the Dolphins would do, but they have the ability to do so now, because I can't think of any position skill-wise on the offense that's not filled with a guy that can take it to the house on any given play.
Yeah. Shout out to Brad Martin. He just donated 5 memberships to the channel. Kel-El, Martina Davies, Mr. Success, Alvidin, and Polly King. Remember, with memberships, you get exclusive emojis. You get exclusive stuff under the community tab, insider info, stuff that I don't talk about on the channel, etc., etc. So shout out to you and enjoy the membership benefits. Richmond, what are your thoughts on the whole OBJ situation?
Yeah, I agree with BallGame. I agree with you. I would rather have him later in the season than early on. And like you say, he had a procedure, and a lot of times a veteran, when you hungry and you want to play, and I'm sure he wants to play in an offense, he was going to push himself to be ready for like week 1. And even if he was a little questionable, sometimes you'll say, no, all right, I'm ready to go. But this time, by the time he hits the field now, for sure, he'll be healthy, this and that. And he's a clutch receiver, big time game. When the game gets tight, this and that, he's a playmaker. So that's what you're going to do down the stretch. And definitely, I'd rather have him toward the last 4 than the first 4 games, because I think we have enough weapons to where we compensate for him not being out there. And then the good thing is, once he does get back out there, now that gives the defense something else to look at and say, wait a minute, he wasn't there before. Now we got to try to game plan for him. And, you know, he can give Tyreek a rest, Waller a rest, or they can all be out there together. It's so many interchangeable pieces that can happen when you got a guy like that as your number 3 receiver. And even like you said, putting Chan out there sometime, letting them catch the ball. I think, like BallGame said, we're going to see some stuff that this offense is always evolving. You really don't get to see much during the preseason, and that's planned, and I'm cool with that. I don't think you should show all your stuff in preseason. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be some people burning timeouts and scratching their head and say, wait a minute, we hadn't seen nothing like this. Timeout, let's here and talk it over. So, it makes perfect sense. I think it was the right decision, and anytime organization is looking out for the player and his longevity, I love that. So, and I think Odell, he gonna do it as well. So yeah, he's in a good position. We can wait for him 4 weeks.
Yeah. All right, guys. Here's the deal, everyone. Next week, next Wednesday, we're going to be live again, but it's going to be the regular season roundtable that we do every year. Me, BallGame, Richmond, Neil Driscoll, Dudley Durong, Brittany will be joining. Martin will be out here. We'll go over all of our regular season predictions, game by game. We will talk about individual predictions and projections for players this year. So make sure it's probably going to be starting next week around 7:00 Eastern. 7 to 8 Eastern is when we'll be good next Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. And we got a lot of content coming your way. I will not be live tomorrow for Fin Too Deep. Instead, me and Neil will be live for a lunchtime edition of Fin Too Deep on Friday. Then I will be back on the weekend for a film study. I'm going to be dropping a film study. I'll give you guys more information on Friday about it, but I'll be back for a film study you're going to want to not miss on this weekend. And then I might have another show this weekend too. We might have a fully jam-packed weekend. So I got another show in the works, so we'll see if that works out too. So a lot of content coming your way over the next week and a half until we get ready for the season opener. I want to ask, there's over 550 of you in the room. We peaked at almost 600 strictly live on YouTube. We don't got to use Facebook, X, or any of these other social media platforms to juice our numbers and make it look like we're popping. All of you guys do that for us. We want to thank each and every one of you for coming out and supporting us the way you guys do. It means the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. We love each and every one of you, even the haters, because they just make us be better. So shout out to all of y'all. Smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we will see y'all on the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day, and we'll see y'all next time.